Welcome back, students. In the previous class we had discussed about the phylum Arthropoda, right? So in this class we shall now discuss the phylum, that is Mollusca. So this Mollusca, that is a phylum which is the second largest phylum in the animal kingdom next to the phylum Arthropoda. So these molluscans are characterized by very soft skin and the external calcareous shells, right. So when you observe a snail, that is the example for the phylum Mollusca, the one of the examples, that is the snails. The snails or any of the other members of this phylum, they are characterized by the soft body with sensory antenna like structures, right, along with the calcareous shells, isn't it? So that is a important characteristic of the members of this phylum. So this phylum, that is the phylum Mollusca, that is the second largest phylum in the animal kingdom. And here when we speak about the habit and habitat, the habit, that is the either they may be terrestrial such as the snails, or sometimes even they may be aquatic, under that they may be either freshwater or marine. For example, octopus. Octopus is an example for marine habitat, right. Likewise, there are different types of phyla, that is another type of snail which is usually located in the freshwater forms. And when we speak about the organ system, it is same as that of arthropodans. Here also we find the organ system of organization with bilateral symmetry, and they are triploblastic, and the animals are coelomates. Clear? So this is the very important and characteristic of this phylum, similar to that of arthropodans. So while writing the characteristics, you have to write it in a particular sequence, that will be easier for you to remember. So while writing the organ system of organization, they are bilaterally symmetrical, triploblastic. So don't write this as in your notes or exam, just write triploblastic. For time being I have written 3, right, 3 referring to 3 layers. So they are triploblastic and they are coelomates. Now speaking about the body, unlike that of the phylum Arthropodans, here the body is covered with calcareous shells, right. So here you find a calcareous shell outside the body, and there in arthropodans we spoke that the body is of segmented and jointed appendages, right. So here that is not segmented, while that is they are unsegmented. So here when we see a snail, we do not find any segments, right, that is they are unsegmented and the body is covered with calcareous shells. Here the body is differentiated into head, a muscular foot and a visceral hump. So that is where in this figure, for example in this diagram, you can see there is a head region, right. So this is a head region and you find a muscular foot, right. There is no distinct limb like structure, but the lower portion of the body itself is modified into a foot like structure which is muscular. So whereas you do not differentiate that as in arthropodans, there you do not find the such similar segmented jointed appendages, but here the skin as such is modified into a foot which is muscular, and here you also find a visceral hump. So this is a visceral organ, and here at the see here there is a hump region, and that is called the visceral hump, and the gap that is between the visceral hump and the muscular foot that is called the mantle cavity, right. So here you find a mantle cavity, that is here inside anatomically there is a cavity within the hump and the visceral organs, right. So that is called the mantle cavity, and there you find the feather like gills. This feather like gills, they help in respiratory function as well as they also help in excretory functions, right. So they are responsible for the respiratory as well as the excretory functions. So that is the mantle cavity, wherein you find feather like gills, clear. Mostly they are predominant in aquatic forms. Sometimes even they also find there is a next region, that is the head region, wherein you find sensory tentacles, right. So for example, in case of octopus you find there is a head which is consisting of the sensory tentacles, and even here, see here, this antenna like structure, that is nothing but the tentacles, right. So they are sensory. So you might have observed that when you take your finger or any of the object close to the snail's body, this tentacles, they will be retracted inside the body, right. So that is where they don't have the clear eyes, but instead of that, the sensory tentacles, they get retracted. And here the mouth, that is very distinct, and there is a typical appendages with, that is of sensory tentacles, and here the mouth is called radula. So that is a technical term used for the mouth in molluscans, and that is very important characteristic of this phylum. And here the gender, it is while speaking about the male and female individuals, they are similar that of arthropodans, that is they are dioecious, and here similar to that of arthropodans, even here they are oviparous, that is they lay their eggs and then that hatches into the larva and then that develops into a mature individual. So here if that is an oviparous organism, that has to be indirect development, right. So this development that takes place through a larval form and then it matures to form a individual, that is the adult, right. So that is how the development takes place. So these are all the examples for the phylum Mollusca. So the first, that is the Pila, which is a common snail that is found in the paddy bunds and paddy fields. So this is an diagram of the Pila. Then Loligo, that is a squid, wherein you find a enlarged body and then at the tip you find the sensory tentacles, right. You might have observed there is a large eye and then you have the tentacles, right. So that belongs to the molluscans. And then the next one, that is the octopus. You might be very familiar with the octopus. And then there is another example, that is the dentalium, which is a commonly called tusk shell. So these are all the examples for the phylum Mollusca. Now when we recall the characters, or we shall revise the characters which are studied. So this is the second largest phylum in the kingdom Animalia. Then speaking about the habit, they may be terrestrial or that may be aquatic. If that is aquatic, they may be freshwater or marine forms. The organ system of organization with bilaterally symmetrical body, and they are triploblastic and coelomates. And the body, that is covered with calcareous shell on the outer surface, and they are unsegmented, which is distinguished into the head, muscular foot, and then there is a visceral hump. So there is a cavity that is present in between the visual hump and the external or the internal organs, that is called the mantle cavity, and it comprises of feather like gills that helps in respiratory and excretory functions, right. Then speaking about the head, that comprises of sensory tentacles, mostly they are 2 in numbers in case of snails and other organs. So the other organisms, for example in octopus they are 8 in numbers, similar it varies. The mouth, that is characterized with a that is very distinct in case of molluscans, and that is called the radula. Then the sexes are separate, that is the male and females are separate. The egg that is laid and the young ones are born out of the egg after incubation period, that is called the oviparous type of reproduction or the oviparous type, right. Then we speak about the development, that is indirect. So here, as the organisms or the members of this phylum, they lay their eggs and the larva comes out of that, and that is why they are called indirect type of development, and this larva, they don't resemble the parents, right. So these are all the important characters of this phylum. So if you have any doubts, you can clarify in the group. Thank you.